Alright, so welcome to our gearbox clutch, gearbox final drive operation. And here we are underneath a pickup that we call what commercial unit, and we're here to look on our gearbox component, our final drive component. Alright, so right at this section right here, normally we refer to it as the bell houser, or some people refer to it as the clutch houser, and this is where we find our clutch assembly. This bell houser, it is where the gearbox and the engine meet and they screw together. If you should look right here, this is the slave cylinder that I was showing the people earlier in class. Slave cylinder, and this is the fork. Here we have the dust boot. See that? So therefore, this release mechanism, is it a hydraulic or a mechanical?
It'll be hydraulic.
Because we have a slave cylinder and all hydraulic system use the F word. What is that?
Fluid.
Alright, very good. And here we have a hose right here. And this would lead straight to which component? This hose would go straight to which component?
Master cylinder. No.
Oh, one man alone me you're talking now? We'll go to which master cylinder. Alright, very good. So here would have the flywheel. The flywheel is bolted onto the back of the crankshaft. And then of course we'd have our clutch disc in the middle that's flying to the input shaft. And then we'd have our pressure plate that bolted on the flywheel. Here we'd have our fork. And when this slave cylinder push out this fork, it will push the throw out bearings or the release bearings and the diaphragm spring of the pressure plate. And when this happens, there is no drive transmitted from the flywheel to the clutch disc to the input shaft of the gearbox. Right? So here we are looking on our gearbox, and this gearbox is actually, people, a four-wheel drive gearbox, because here we have the, they call it the transfer case. The transfer case, yeah?
But
So-
that means it can get to go in a two-wheel drive too.
Yes, this can be two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, but how you engage two-wheel drive, although the assembly is on, there's a locking mechanism right here.
Okay. The component them there.
See them right here, sir? And the locking mechanism now, you can lock the vehicle into four-wheel or you can pull it, but you'd have to come out physically and turn the mechanism. Alright? So, and here is the front diff. Here is the front diff. Alright? So, transfer case right here at the back of the gearbox. Transfer case right there. Alright? And front diff right here. Alright, so, and of course, this is what we call the drive shaft. Some people might call it the prop shaft. Alright, no.
What shaft?
Propeller shaft.
Oh,
Alright, right here, so now on the gearbox. Right here, so now on the gearbox. If you just look on this right here, this is actually speedometer. So the speedometer would be driven by the output shaft. Alright? And if we should look right here, some of these things are like reverse light switch. So the reverse light switch in the gearbox, you know. So when you put the vehicle in reverse, it's actually a grounds. That's how you see the reverse light. Alright, so here we have the drive shaft or the prop shaft. But this prop shaft actually in two pieces. First piece, second piece. Whenever you have a two-piece prop shaft, you need something that we call center line bearings. And the purpose of the center line bearings is to support the prop shaft. Alright? Most of the gearbox that you would work on are one piece. Right here would have a sliding yoke. But the sliding yoke is not right here in this particular system.
okay.
Alright? We have a flange right here. We have this, what we call a cross arm bearings, which is a U joint. Actually, the correct name is actually a hook joint. So it's a hook U joint, a universal joint. All right, this is the shaft, drive shaft. Here is the center line bearings. When this rubber bushing become bad enough, there's a lot of noise underneath this place.
Like go down the bad now, so.
And this rubber bushing seems like it has gone through some stress. All right, right here now. If I should look where the spline is, this is a sliding yoke. So this is what now will lengthen,
And this how would I
increase the
usually
length of the
rate
shaft or reduce the length of the shaft.
That would I usually rate this one.
Yeah, and so most of the vehicle.
Or usually don't use
Because during up and down suspension movement, the shaft will move in and out. Alright, right here now, this is also the hook joint or the universal joint. Locally, we call it cross arm bearing. So if you go to garage and you hear people talk about cross arm bearings, it's a universal joint they are talking about on this drive shaft. And them call it drive shaft, but they call it prop shaft, drive shaft. Really the same thing. Alright, in this component right here now, this is a final drive and differential assembly unit. What two components make up the final drive? Just two components alone make up it. What are they? The crown wheel or ring gear. The crown wheel and the ring gear is the same thing. And what?
Diff.
Start with P.
the P.
Pinion.
Pinion.
Yeah, pinion gear.
Pinion gear, pinion shaft. Alright? At the end of the pinion shaft would be a gear. So the crown wheel and the pinion, the crown wheel and the pinion gear make up the final drive. Right here, so there's a seal right here, and oftentimes you might look underneath some vehicle and see some leakage taking place right here. There's a seal right here that to keep you in the defile. Alright? The differential now, remember we're talking about differential and the cornering of the road wheel. In all situations, if you should turn this shaft right here, hold one of the wheel. One of the wheel. You see how the next one turn? What is causing the other wheel to turn is the differential. Alright? And it's during cornering, remember I know, the inner wheel, the outer wheel would have to turn a far distance. So? And the inner wheel turn a less distance. So you find that the inner wheel can have a less a lot of dragging force on it, the inner wheel. So the differential allow these road wheel to wear properly, and of course if you are taking care of the vehicle have more stability on these things. So when you go into the workshop now, we'll see what a disassembled gearbox look like. Pause. Hey, hold on, guys. Let me have a video. Ready now? Remember you have to follow the pointer. Tell me when you're ready.
Ready?
Alright, so here we have a typical gearbox. This gearbox is taken from a rear wheel drive vehicle because as I see at the back there is no differential housing. Alright, so here we have the clutch housing, we have the extension housing, and we have the case. Some people might call it case in a housing for the gearbox. These things were already removed. So what we're going to do, some bolts around here. We should look right here. Bolts around here. So we'll take out these bolts and we will remove the clutch housing. Alright, clutch housing. So this is where the clutch and the component is housed. Alright, so right here, this shaft right here, which is the input shaft, this is where the clutch disc would be splined, and where's my clutch disc? Alright, this particular clutch disc is not for this gearbox. So your clutch disc will spline on this input shaft right here. Alright? And as you can see, key thing to remember, all shafts, they are supported by bearings because the shaft cannot support itself. So of course a gasket will be right here, let me see. Alright. So a gasket will have to be right here and right here to ensure that there's no oil leak. And of course we have a seal. Here's a seal, no leak. So if you have a gearbox and there is leaking coming from this flange right here, we know that there's some seal failure. And of course, and it's coming between the clutch housing and the gearbox housing, you know that there's some gasket or some seal failure. Alright, so the next section we want to remove now is the extension housing. So as you can see, there are some bolt holes. Oi, hold on with the knives there. And remove the extension housing. Remove the extension housing. Alright. So the extension housing, at the back of the extension housing, we have seal. Alright. And Here is the output shaft. So at the front we have the input shaft, here is the output shaft. And this part of the output shaft now with spline into the drive shaft, into the sliding yoke. Alright? And inside the extension housing on this particular gearbox. This little gear right here is a speedometer. So this speedometer gear right here will be driven by the output shaft, but this particular speedometer is a mechanically operated speedometer. Alright? Right here now we have the interlock mechanism. Here is this interlock mechanism, and the purpose of this interlock mechanism is only to allow one gear to be selected at any given time. Because if you look where the interlock mechanism is and look where the shift fork rod, because this is actually the rod, the shift fork rod is, you can see that when the gear is shifting and taking place, alright, when it is taking place, up, down, it's only one gear can be selected at any given time. Alright, so here we have now the casing or the gearbox housing, and of course these were already, bolts were already removed prior to this. Alright, good. So here we have the case now, and in this case now, good. So here we have the shift rod, and here we have the fork. Alright, so whenever we learn about the extension housing, so with this interlock mechanism we'll have movements right here and movement right here. These movements will then transmit it to the shift fork. The fork now will then transmit the movement to the shift rod. These fork now will then sit inside the synchronizer sleeve. Alright, these type of synchronizer, you're not going to see them on fluid type of gearbox that we use now. The type of synchronizer that you will see are these ones. Let me see the gearbox right here. Alright, good. So the type of synchronizer that you will see are these type of synchronizer. And of course, we call these type of synchronizer, we call them the blocking ring synchronizer, some people call them the Barker ring synchronizer. So these are the type of synchronizer you will see in our gearbox. Alright? And the components are pretty similar. Here we have the casing. Alright, can't see nothing much right here, so let us go back over to our gearbox. Alright. However, the fork which is right here, it will fit in the synchronizer sleeve, and when it fits in the synchronizer sleeve, during the movement of these shifting, synchronization will take place. Alright, so here we have the input shaft. Critical thing, remember the input shaft is driven by the clutch disc. The input shaft is also has a bearings. Pay attention to the people, a bearing. This bearings are ball bearings that support the input shaft. Then now, this should be a taper roller bearing because of a taper shape. Good, very good. Right here now we have the lay shaft. So the input shaft is constantly in mesh with the lay shaft. What will determine what is the output gear is the synchronizer when it locks to the, this is actually first gear, second gear, third gear, and fourth gear now is when this synchronizer locks to the input shaft. So this is how the drive will go. The drive will come to the input shaft, then go to the lay shaft, and then all of these gears will be spinning on the lay shaft. The synchronizer will be in the middle. Once the synchronizer in the middle, that means that the gearbox is in neutral. Or it be in the middle, all of this mechanism right here will ensure that the fork, the shift rod right here, the sleeve, this fork in the middle, neutral. If you want to select gear 1 now, gear 1, you'd use a gear stick lever and you would shift. That I can see if I can figure out which one operate first gear. Alright, good. So this one would operate gear 1 and gear 2. This particular one, because it will be like this, right? No, well, wrong. It will be like this. Very good. So if it be like this, then the fork that operate this one, which is this one. So very good. So we can trace this fork right here, and this fork is meshed to this rod. So this rod right here is the gear 1 and gear 2 rod. So when this rod move back and forth, this fork move back and forth. So when this fork move back and forth now, the bigger one, which is right here, so when it go like this, the drive now will transmit from this gear right here, from the lay shaft mixed with this gear right here to the output shaft, and then we'll have first gear. Then now when we pull back this rod and the fork push right here, within second gear, so the drive will transmit from input lay to this gear right here now. This gear mesh with this gear, then this start to drive the output shaft. So this is second gear. The third gear now would have to be this. So this would control third and fourth. So the drive will come right here, so, and then this synchronizer would lock right here. Then within third gear. Then fourth gear now is direct drive, where the drive come to the input shaft and we lock this synchronizer right here, and then we have direct drive to the output shaft.
Everything is spinning.
And everything will be spinning. So basically that's how the power flows. No, the reverse gear is normally a spur gear. You see a spur gear? It's not look like that. This is not a spur gear. So normally have a spur gear and an idle gear, but this gearbox has been disassembled so many times we are not seeing that spur gear and that idle gear. So what are the key components of the gearbox now? Clutch housing, extension housing, and here we have the body. Some people call it body, or the casing of the gearbox. Those are the three key components. Alright, the inner component now of the gearbox is in the extension housing in this particular gearbox. In the extension housing we have the speedometer, which is right here, and the speed, and it would be right here, and the speedometer is driven by the output shaft to know the correct speed of the vehicle. We have the interlock mechanism, which is right here, and the purpose of the interlock mechanism is to only allow one gear to be selected at any given time. People are never get them here for an exam. I'll not get it on the video. Now we have the shift rod. Here is the shift rod, and this shift rod mesh with a shift fork. There's another component that I have not highlighted. And this shift fork, we have a thing that we call selector detent. These are actually some balls and spring, and they would normally located right here and right here. And the purpose of these balls and spring is to prevent the gearbox from jumping out of gear. So if you have a gearbox that constantly jumping out of gear, the ball and spring most likely can be defective. There are other things that can cause it to jump out of gear. For example, if your bearings is not firm, it can cause the vehicle to jump out of gear. If your bearings is worn, if the shaft is bent, lay shaft is bent, or you have any chip teeth or the gear damage, it can cause the vehicle to jump out of gear. And of course, if you have any mount problem or linkage problem, it can cause the vehicle to jump out of gear. So these are some of the things that can cause the vehicle to jump out of gear. Alright? So
how it would that look when it jump out again?
What would that look? No, man, I have to be more specific than that. What are you asking exactly?
Yes, alright, pertaining to jumping out of gear.
Yes.
what will jump out again?
You're in a gear 1 and you're driving, boom, and the vehicle neutral up.
Okay.
Second gear, in neutral up, constantly jumping out of gear. And you have to hold the gear stick when you drive. The type of vehicle my banks drive, when you have to hold the gear stick, because if you leg off of the gear stick, you jump out of gear.
Right, so yes,
So
sir.
that's how banks truck them still.
Is there neutral gear?
Neutral?
Yeah,
The gearbox in neutral. There's no such thing. The gearbox in neutral. That means all of these synchronizer will be in the middle. They are not engaged.
Okay.
Alright?
So nothing would be engaged until.
No. So basically, and of course you have the input shaft, the lay shaft, the output shaft. You have the input shaft gear, which is this gear right here, the input shaft bearings. You have the lay shaft gear, and you have the lay shaft bearing. The shaft supported by some bearings, and you have the output shaft, and you have the output shaft bearings. Alright? These gears now, this gear, and this gear, and this gear, these gears are supported by some bearings that we call needle roller bearings. Some look at bearings that look like some needle. Those are needle roller bearings. Alright? So this gear, it transmits input shaft gear to the lay shaft. And the lay shaft is constantly spinning at the same speed at the input shaft. What makes the difference is the gear ratio. Because these are gear ratio, and if you should count the number of teeth on this gear compared to this one, you get probably a ratio like probably 3 to 1 or 3.2 to 1.
If you want like a longer gear ratio,
No man, you have to get a gearbox or buy a gearbox for that. You cannot change this gear ratio. You cannot change it. Build that way. You don't stay like the diff where you can get a bigger diff or a smaller diff. So alright, so in summary, purpose of the gearbox is to provide neutral, reverse, and match the vehicle speed or road speed with the engine power. Alright? The gearbox comprises of the clutch housing, extension housing, and case. Within the case of the gearbox, within the case of the gearbox, we have the shift rod, the shift fork. This is the idle shaft. So we have the shift rod, shift fork, the idle shaft. Within the gearbox itself, we have the input shaft. We have the input shaft bearings. We have the main shift shaft or output shaft, which is the same thing. We have the output shaft bearings. We have the lay shaft and the lay shaft bearings. And these gears now, they are constantly in mesh with each other. What will determine which gear is selected is the movement of the synchronizer. The synchronizer is moved by this fork right here. Alright? So this fork would be, let's see now, this, good. Yeah? So this fork right here will be responsible for gear 1 and gear 2. So when the shift rod move, it allows the fork move back and forth, allow the synchronizer sleeve to move back and forth to select the gear. How the gear is transmitted from the lay shaft, which is, this is gear 1. So this small gear drive a big gear. That's why when you step on the gas pedal, you hear the engine go, and the vehicle is not going anywhere because this shaft is moving about 3 times as fast and this shaft is moving 1 at its speed. When you step on it again now, second gear, engine and move, the vehicle start to respond. When you step on third speed, because if you should look right here now and look right here, these two gears seem like they're in the same ratio, are close to the same ratio. And fourth gear now is direct drive from the engine. This is when this synchronizer right here lock with the output shaft. And of course, the gearbox it have inspecting a gasket for seal, the extension housing for oil leak and all these things. And of course, you have to make sure the oil change in the gearbox and those things. So any question? Alright, that's it.